those 15 minutes of his defense staggered with the starters and the bench is a lot better than what they have right now, and that would be something I would consider if I were the Sacramento Kings. A lot of bigger guards and even smaller guards who just like to rebound, like to get their teammates involved, and they just become great players to build your team around. And that's what Josh Giddey is. Josh Giddey is legit, and I think it's only going to get harder for them because now Trae Young, not only has he had a slow start production-wise shooting the basketball, but now he's out with a knee injury for at least the next 4 weeks. And again, when your star point guard is out, like this is who you built your team around, it's going to change a lot of things. This was a guy that I did like that pick in the NBA draft. I thought he was a sleeper pick, and I love that he's proven to already be the exact player I always wanted the Memphis Grizzlies to have. Welcome to Hip to the Games, the podcast for you, the basketball junkie and the hip-hop head. I'm your host, Desmond, and I too have had hoop dreams and enjoy the beautiful genre of hip-hop and its history. Together, we will enjoy some of the greatest albums, songs, artists, players, moments, teams, and so much more, while even mixing the two on occasion, all in my hope that you remember why you love both or either of these to begin with. You'll soon understand that Hip to the Games is more than just a podcast. It's a lifestyle. And if you were looking for a platform that combines both basketball and hip-hop, you've come to the right place. They play my kind of basketball. And a lot of layers to this song if you're really paying attention. Here's a huge shout out to you for being hip to the games. Welcome to another episode of Hip to the Games. Whether you are new to the H2DG family or a day one supporter, I appreciate you listening or watching today's show. All praise to the creative director, Jesus Christ, as it's always a blessing to get in front of this microphone and share what he's put in my heart with you. And a special shout out to the home team, 19 Media Group, for the opportunity to represent a network filled with passionate independent podcasters. If you consider yourself hip to the games, I would really appreciate it if you took a few seconds sometime during this episode to give the show an honest rating and review on audio platforms like Apple Podcasts or Spotify so we can continue to grow the H2DG family. For now, though, as the NBA season has tipped off, there are already some teams who haven't gotten off to the best starts. And while I wouldn't encourage anyone to hit the panic button this early in the season, for once I think I'm going to put my GM hat on. I brainstormed some trades for a few teams that should look to salvage their season before they find it getting worse. So I'm going to get into some GM talk, a little trade talk with the ESPN Trade Machine to start this episode. And then after that, I do want to share some general analysis and commentary and thoughts on teams who have started off hot versus teams who have not. And then lastly, I want to end the episode showing love to 3 rookies who have looked like seasoned veterans already in just their young careers. So a lot of good stuff coming this episode, a lot of variety coming this episode. And without further ado, let's get right into it with some front office frolicking, shall we? Now, early this season, it's been clear that teams like the Houston Rockets, Dallas Mavericks, and Sacramento Kings have already experienced hardships due to holes in their roster construction. And I actually want to start with Houston because if you remember my early season storylines episode, I severely underestimated their point guard situation. I was wrong. And being honest, my thought process was this. In the past, my traditional NBA values often turned out to be outdated. In 2021, I was huge on the Clippers trading for Rajon Rondo. I thought it was one of the best moves of the deadline that year, and I thought it was going to be guaranteed the final piece that they needed to cruise to an NBA championship. Of course, they ended up making the Western Conference Finals that year, and I've been of the notion that the 2021 Finals was supposed to be the Los Angeles Clippers and the Brooklyn Nets. That's neither here nor there. But although they did make the Western Conference Finals, Rajon Rondo was not the biggest part of the journey to that round. So then you look at last year, right? We fast forward to last year, and I initially wasn't buying the Indiana Pacers because I felt they were missing a go-to half-court scorer that could take over games when they needed the most on a everyday basis. All right. And most of the time they found ways to win as a team. And if they absolutely needed buckets, it was going to be Pascal Siakam or Tyrese Halliburton's takeover. So they often traded the role. So when it came to this season, and we're talking about the Houston Rockets, I figured this year I'd switch it up, right? I'm like, okay, well, if I was wrong in the past, it's okay to be human and change your opinion and change your worldviews and whatnot, right? So I'm like, okay, maybe my stuff is outdated, right? Maybe the NBA that I grew up loving and became a fan of and studied all these years is no more. I have to adapt with the times, right? So I'm like, oh, they'll be fine. The Houston Rockets will be fine. It's the new NBA. Some of the best teams don't even have pure floor generals. They'll be all right. So I went with that approach. And let this be a lesson. Play your game. Okay, double entendre, right? Like if you're a hooper, it's going to make perfect sense. But if you're a human being, everyday human being, man, like it still makes sense. Play your game. Or as we heard growing up, do you. Do you. You won't win them all, but you'll always be able to honorably accept defeat when you play your best. Right? I should have stuck to what I knew and what I genuinely believed in my heart because, man, the Houston Rockets have struggled to fill the void left by Fred VanVleet's injury. And it hasn't been super ugly per se, but after watching that opening night game versus the OKC Thunder, you just already know come playoff time when they're facing good teams out west, no matter what round they make it to in the playoffs, they are going to face somebody that they can't take lightly. That flaw is going to be exposed in the playoffs. And we saw that versus OKC. I think Amen Thompson is a great connector. He's not a floor general. Watching Reed Shepherd, the more I see him, he plays like he's meant to be more of a spark plug as opposed to an offensive initiator. And don't get me started on Alperen Sengun, who I'm afraid is, while I love his game, I'm afraid he's starting to fall more in love with his growth on the perimeter than his inside presence. And again, I can be wrong. It's still a very long season ahead. I think he's actually done a pretty good job supplementing both his inside presence and his outside strengths. But that is something that I'm watching. I think he's now forced to bring the ball up a little bit more, especially in that opener versus OKC. He succumbed to a lot of the same traps and pressure at the top of the arc, the same way Nikola Jokic was in the playoffs. If you watch that game, OKC guarded Alperen Sengun the exact same way they guarded Nikola Jokic. Put Caruso on Sengun, or even make traps with Cason Wallace and Lou Dort, or Cason Wallace, Alex Caruso, like whatever it was. And I think the only difference in that game is that as the fourth quarter and overtime periods developed, Alperen Sengun was able to use some of his drop steps and post moves and strength advantage that he kind of had on those smaller lineups to get closer to the basket and or fight for position, get easy putbacks and so forth. So I thought he did a better job of that, despite them losing the game still. But call me what you want. But again, when I mention these things, this is why I've been saying that we have to be very careful with this idea of positionless basketball. I'm not saying I'm against it. I think it's a beautiful thing when done the right way. The idea of a Thompson, Kevin Durant, Jabari Smith, Alperen Sengun, and Steven Adams starting five sounds fun and unique and like a cheat code until 37-year-old Kevin Durant is focused on the marathon of the NBA season and not the sprint. Until Jabari Smith realizes that by experience, he's going to learn how to not step on Kevin Durant's toes while feeling confident enough to be the help that KD and his team needs. Until Amen Thompson realizes that the team will benefit from his drives more than him being passive. Until Alperen Sengun realizes it's physically and mentally exhausting to be the point guard and the power forward at the same time, and how that's going to tire him quicker than his typical workload. So all of a sudden, the Rockets point guard hole looks bigger than ever right now. So while not perfect by any means, I'm not an expert by any stretch, and I'm not saying that these are the only viable trade scenarios. I did, just for fun and the love of the game, I took a stab at solving the Rockets point guard scenario in a way that accounts for their present dilemma and their vision for the future and their overall style of play. All right. So again, it's easy for me to be in front of this microphone and let's hear what Desmond thinks about the Houston Rockets, but how about we actually put solutions in place? How about we actually try to think critically, think about how, what would you do in this situation, right? So using the ESPN's trade machine, I came up with a trade involving the Utah Jazz in this scenario for the Houston Rockets. Now, if you are watching on YouTube, you do see the trade in front of you, but for my audio listeners, I have the Houston Rockets trading Reed Shepherd, Steven Adams, Jayshawn Tate, and JD Davidson to the Utah Jazz for Isaiah Collier, Walker Kessler, George Niang, and Kyle Anderson. Okay, now here's the thing about this trade. Okay, I know, and even a lot of the trades that I'm going to talk about today aren't the sexiest trades. They're not the flashiest names, and a lot of there's in some way, shape, or form somebody in there is involved with some kind of injury history or current injury or what have you. These are by no means perfect trades, but just roll with me. The thing about this trade is that I was really just trying to hypothetically find a way to get Isaiah Collier in a Rockets jersey. And I added Walker Kessler by accident. Like I accidentally clicked on his name and I'm just like, well, let's see where this goes, right? Walker Kessler is somebody who's been in trade rumors the last couple of seasons. Why not, right? And maybe, again, it'll sweeten that deal for the Houston Rockets, right? They may not be as excited about Isaiah Collier, but that Walker Kessler, getting a younger rim protector, somebody who can still rebound. Again, losing Steven Adams would be tough, but you have a young Walker Kessler who's on a playoff team and a team that wants to win now, like Houston. I think that would be really intriguing. And like I said, that's how it went. And I liked it for Houston because, like I said, although they lose Steven Adams' strength and his veteran presence here, you can never beat having those guys in your locker room and on the floor. They do get younger by acquiring a good rebounder and really good shot blocker that Walker Kessler is. And then despite Isaiah Collier shooting 24% from three last season, I think bringing in George Niang helps make up for that weakness while allowing the Rockets to keep perimeter shooting depth with George. And then along with Kyle Anderson, you still have, again, somebody that can play in bigger lineups, even if it's just a few minutes a game. And if you've listened or watched the pod over the past year, you'll know that I am a believer in Isaiah Collier's upside and feel for the game. He currently has yet to make his sophomore debut due to a hamstring injury, and I know it would be hard to have him and Amen Thompson on the floor together. I know that's not ideal in that trade. Again, this wouldn't be a trade with a high grade, right? But I think that he is a player that has the ability to see the floor the way a point guard should see the floor. Evaluate matchups, find mismatches, call plays that will get the guy with the hot hand opportunities to score, or ones that will help the quiet guy get involved in the game so his rhythm isn't off and you're playing essentially 4-on-5 basketball, right? Knowing when to run versus when to slow down, knowing when to look for his own shot versus making sure his teammates are in rhythm. All of those qualities, right? Making reads on the floor, recognizing plays, calling those things out, recognizing, all of those things. There's so much that goes into the point guard position other than bringing up the basketball. Now, on the flip side, I do see this as a good trade for Utah as well because, again, despite having quality guards like Keontae George and Walter Clayton Jr., Reed Sheppard would still have pretty much the same opportunity he has with the Rockets right now to earn more minutes and balance a bigger roster with more guard depth. And even as they would hypothetically get Steven Adams, it would further open the door for Kyle Filipowski to not just grow as a starting caliber forward/center, but become a permanent piece for the Utah Jazz's future. Again, this is all hypothetical and they're not perfect. And I know this would be a big responsibility for a guy like Isaiah Collier, right? To step in this young, coming off an injury on this playoff team, and they're expecting big things from him. That would be a lot to carry right now. Again, he's still a raw talent himself, not the greatest shooter, and still I think needs to bridge his talent with his efficiency. Again, hasn't played yet this season, but to me, I think he has all the instincts. He has the feel for the game. And quite frankly, he is a point guard by definition, right? Not a scoring guard that happens to be small or a shooting guard with point guard skills, but a point guard that wants to be the quarterback on the court. Right. And the reason why I went a little bit deeper with a cut like Isaiah Collier is because in a perfect world, my dream scenario for the Houston Rockets is to get DeJounte Murray. As to me, he fits their defensive identity perfectly. And I think the last time we saw him run a team by himself was his All-Star season in San Antonio. He was averaging like 28 and 9 and 2 steals a game. You know what I mean? Like I think his time in Atlanta allowed him to grow his offensive game. That's why you saw a little bit less of his playmaking, and I think even his defense took a little bit of a hit because he had to help Trey generate offense scoring the ball. Right? That was his role over there. And even as I say that, right, I think of Jrue Holiday. I know a lot of people have said Jrue Holiday, who's been playing great basketball this year to start the year. I'm so happy for him because I saw on my timeline so many people saying he was washed. And I just hate that, right? The thing about it is like my generation, I've said it before, we're getting used to this. Is really the first time we're seeing people we've watched their whole careers like get older, and now they're getting older in a new NBA where it's cool to be older technically, right? Like guys are still playing productive, dare I say, all-star basketball at 36, 37 years old, right? So like it's really cool to see Drew Holiday. I think he would be, even now with how he's playing to start the year, I think he's an even better fit for Houston, and I think brings a similar impact to Fred VanVleet. But financially, those trades are virtually impossible. I tried trying to get DeJounte Murray. I tried throwing in Drew Holiday, and there was just nothing that could work without the Rockets trying to include Amen Thompson, Kevin Durant, Steven, what have you. Like, or excuse me, Alperen Sengun, not Steven Adams. It would take that to at least financially get Drew Holiday or DeJounte Murray. So I had to think a bit outside the box. Again, I know there are other names. I saw Kobe White's name as a target, and I think this trade would work, involving Shepard, Jayshawn Tate, JD Davidson, and Jeff Green to the Chicago Bulls for Kobe White. And though I do think that would be really good for Houston, Kobe White, to me, has been more of a scorer than a facilitator, so I'm not entirely sure he'd be the true point guard Houston is looking for. Sure, is he somebody that's been in the league for a little bit, has found his rhythm as a player? Absolutely. Would he be a great fit, especially with his, ability to score and shoot? Absolutely. But to me, there are some similarities to D'Angelo Russell, just in the sense that these guys they can be really talented playmakers, but it just seems like when I watch them, they would rather score. And I don't think Houston technically needs another scorer. They need somebody to feed scorers like Kevin Durant, right? Jabari Smith, and then somebody who can play inside out like Alperen Sengun, right? This is why we're here to talk about those kind of point guards. So again, I'm not against that trade by no means. That would be cool. Like again, as a Bulls fan, as somebody from the Chicagoland area, like absolutely it would be cool to see Kobe White on a team like that. But I still just don't know if that's the perfect fit, but it is something good. And obviously he's better than Isaiah Collier in that regard, as far as all around talent. So, it would be nice. It would be nice, but nonetheless, these are all options that I think if you want somebody more established than Isaiah Collier, yeah, go for Kobe White, and then see what's out, see if you can make anything happen for DeJounte Murray at some point down the line when he returns, or if there is a way to somehow get Drew Holiday, once some of the signing thresholds are up, right? And I know it's like past December 15th for a lot of these guys. So there are options that the Houston Rockets have, slim options financially. They might have to go for more lower key guys, like I said, like Isaiah Collier, but it's interesting. I think most teams choose to stick it out. I think Houston, they haven't really been that bad. It's just more about, are they going to be ready come playoff time to play more of those games that they played versus OKC? And that's what you're kind of going to be a little anxious to see how they respond in that regard. Because again, it could be one of those seasons where it's like, okay, the Rockets got their scorer in Kevin Durant, but now when they got their scorer, they don't have the point guard that they need to thrive in the playoffs. So yeah, it's gonna be tough if they don't figure it out. But I just threw on my GM hat and decided to do it for them and see. So let me know what you think about that trade. But next up is the Sacramento Kings, who are a very interesting group. Okay, I know I didn't have a lot of great things to say about them in my episode where I predicted the NBA standings for the year, but they do have all-star caliber players in Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Domantas Sabonis. Obviously, former all-star Russell Westbrook now. They have those high-energy guards, Schroeder, Russ, Keon Ellis, I really like over there. And they have that microwave six man in Malik Monk, right? Like, and while out with the injury, they have shooting coming from Keegan Murray, and because of his 6'8" frame, he has embraced guarding the opposing team's best player most nights. But this is the problem with the Sacramento Kings, is that outside of this talent that I listed, they have more guards who are talented enough to see the floor, and then this weird mix of raw, scrappy front court players who can play the small ball five in limited minutes. And in my opinion, it's the lack of wings, most notably on the perimeter, and their lack of interior defense that has made this team look a lot worse than what they probably should be. Now, no matter the talent, they often struggle to win games because, to me, their best defenders are 6'3". Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder, right? If I believe it was the Laker game, like the fact that Doug Christie, he had to put Dennis Schroeder on Austin Reeves, right? Austin Reeves went off for 50 that game. And the best player that you could put on 6'5" Austin Reeves is 6'3", 6'2" Dennis Schroeder, 6'3", 6'4" Keon Ellis, which again, not bad height-wise, right? Energy, they give great energy. But I was like, man, Austin Reeves is going to find a way to get around those guys, which he did, right? So because their best defenders are generally smaller players, and because they have virtually nobody on their roster that limits teams from attacking the basket, I had to go to work, man. I had to go to work on the ESPN Trade Machine and try to find somebody actually for both of those roles, right? I wanted to find somebody that could be a perimeter presence and somebody that could be more of an interior presence. So given their current roster construction, I've noticed that unless they don't mind giving up Malik Monk, most trades are going to have to involve Keon Ellis. And again, I love watching that brother defend and disrupt passing lanes. But man, it just seems like in every trade situation, the Kings are going to have to sacrifice his presence if they want to fill the more dire holes in their roster. So that being said, both of these trades that I'm going to propose involve Keon Ellis, Devin Carter, and Dario Saric. Now, if they would like to fill their need for interior defense, I propose these gentlemen going to the Portland Trailblazers in exchange for Robert Williams III. And, I think for the Blazers, receiving Keon Ellis and Devin Carter allows them to maintain their reignited defensive identity that we've seen the past year or two, while getting an emergency stretch big in Dario Saric. And with Donovan Clingan and Hanson Young as the team's centers moving forward, I think there is room for teams to try to steal Robert Williams as a backup big. I think his ability to protect the rim is probably his strongest attribute, and he attacks the glass with aggression. These are all skills that Sacramento needs, and they've been in need of for quite some time now. They weren't able to get and even passed on guys like Kamal Malawach, Thomas Sorber, and Ryan Kalkbrenner in the draft, and free agents like Clint Capella and even DeAndre Jordan. Those guys went elsewhere. And despite his injury history, I think Robert Williams it wouldn't be a bad look if they are desperate to bring in an intimidating presence off the bench to improve their defensive woes. I think he'd be great in that role. All he's got to do is really play 15 minutes a night. Right? I think he's capable of doing that when he's healthy, but of course you never know. But then again, you got to be willing to take some of those decisions when you want your team to improve. Now, if they would rather add a presence off the bench, that's an additional body who can be versatile enough to lock up the perimeter and help out in the interior, then they might want to make that same trade that I mentioned, right? Keon Ellis, Devin Carter, and Dario Saric to the Orlando Magic for Jonathan Isaac. Right? Obviously, bringing in Keon Ellis and Devin Carter, I think, would give the Magic an abundance of guards. So maybe it would be better if a third team was involved to diversify those contents of the trade. So I also added some trades here where maybe Keon Ellis goes to Milwaukee for Andre Jackson Jr. or, to Phoenix, right? With Orlando receiving Nick Richards. With Mo Wagner out with injury, right? So there's some ways you can do it, but the Magic still have enough size and versatility, in my opinion, where losing Jonathan Isaac, it would hurt, but it wouldn't be that bad. And besides, they haven't played him very much to start this season. I know, again, he's another guy that's really been getting about 15 minutes. I saw the other night, I think there was a game they played the Charlotte Hornets, I want to say, and within 6 minutes, Jonathan Isaac already had 3 blocks. Like, again, the Kings need somebody like that. And it's a guy who can hold his own on the perimeter and do things like that, protect the basket. So I think it would be a really good trade. Obviously, the thing with Jonathan Isaac, is that this brother hasn't been the healthiest dude. He struggled with injuries throughout his career. But like I said, last season in 15 minutes a game, he managed to play 71 games plus the playoffs. So for Sacramento, I think, again, those 15 minutes of his defense staggered with the starters and the bench is a lot better than what they have right now. And that would be something I would consider if I were the Sacramento Kings. Many teams around the league have prepared their rosters to face teams like OKC and Cleveland, who have these double big lineups, right? Or should we say traditional NBA lineups, right? And then there's teams that are trying to prepare to individually contain superstars like Victor Wembanyama and Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Sacramento Kings have none of that. They don't have any of that, right? And if they don't consider making a move in hopes of being the kind of competitive team they want to be, especially in a stacked Western Conference, the only move left to make might be a rebuild. And then lastly, it's the Dallas Mavericks, another Texas team that somehow has a need for a point guard. And I think the first thing I thought of was like the mystery of D'Angelo Russell, man. I will never understand it. How a former second pick in the NBA draft suddenly isn't fit for a team that is without their superstar point guard due to ACL rehab. Like, I understand he has his flaws. I understand some people think he plays lazy basketball. You know, he seems to take nights off some games. But this was a guy that 10 years ago was drafted to be the guy that makes plays for his teammates and hit big shots. He showed flashes of that in LA with the Lakers, and it even eventually got him his lone All-Star appearance with the Brooklyn Nets in 2019. But despite stints in the Bay, Minnesota, the Lakers again, and then Brooklyn again since then, he's found himself in a situation where his head coach still goes to the media and says, we're shorthanded with point guards. And, you know, I love J Kidd. You know what I'm saying? I love J Kidd. Grew up with J Kidd as an NBA fan. You know what I mean? Like, on the court, that dude. But when I heard him say that, I said, are you serious? You mean to tell me D'Angelo Russell, Brandon Williams, who has a little bit of that Kyrie Irving, he's like a baby Kyrie Irving, right? And then Ryan Nembhard, who people loved. I thought people had great things to say about him around the draft time. Like, you have all those options to work with, and none of these guys are playing. Like, or I shouldn't say that, but like, none of these guys are given the kind of basketball you want to have for your team, to where you felt like you had to start Cooper Flagg, who isn't even a point guard. Sure, he's going to learn some tips and tricks that'll do well for him as he continues his NBA career. But again, you drafted him because in a perfect world, you saw him with Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis as a great connecting forward piece. And mind you, Jason Kidd is the same head coach who tried to put that lineup together when he was coaching Milwaukee of Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton, Jabari Parker, John Henson, and Thon Maker, I believe it was. And we saw how that worked out. It didn't. So clearly the Mavs are also in need of a floor general. And while I also think DeJounte Murray would be a great fit for this team as well, defensive minded, floor general, doesn't mind making plays for himself, the Mavericks are financially cooked. They are financially screwed, so they cannot do that. And they are so far over the tax line. Virtually any trade I tried to make on the ESPN Trade Machine was not even close to being successful. I got excited once I realized that hypothetically the Bulls would probably be okay with a Kobe White for D'Angelo Russell and Max Christie swap, right? Thanks to guys like Josh Giddey, Trey Jones, Ayo DeSumo, and Montes Buzelis playing good basketball without Kobe, until I realized that the Dallas Mavericks are just way beyond the tax line. I even tried to see if they could steal Scottie Pippen Jr. from Memphis, to no avail. I don't know if it's the trade machine or like literally this franchise is just absolutely cooked financially, but by the looks of things, J Kidd and the Mavs are just going to have to figure this out. They're going to have to make do with their point guards that they have until number 11 returns. It's sometimes it's that simple. You got to play the hand that you were dealt. And I think, unfortunately, that's where the Dallas Mavericks are. So there you have it. I told you the GM role was never my go-to, but there's a first time for everything, right? What do you think of the hypothetical trades I proposed? What other trade targets should the Rockets and the Kings look at? Do you think the Mavs have enough to withstand their point guard dilemma? Be sure to let me know in the comments whether you are watching on YouTube or listening on audio platforms, or of course you can hit me on the socials to share your thoughts with me. But in the meantime, it's time to transition as I discuss who's hot and who's not. My Chicago Bulls, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Boston Celtics, and the Atlanta Hawks. All right, so if we're starting with the hot hands, you know I got to start with the home team, man. My Chicago Bulls were one of the few undefeated teams to start the season, and I was basking in it because why not? Right? Listen, we've known that the Bulls aren't a franchise that has embraced tanking, and they have been able to get players who fall in line with that mindset. Does it put the team in the best position for draft picks? Not exactly. But do you respect it from a competitive standpoint? Absolutely. Well, at least I do, but absolutely, right? And man, I am really impressed with this team. And, you know, I tweeted, if you follow me on Twitter, I tweeted, you knew teams were going to be inspired by what the Indiana Pacers did last season. You just didn't expect it to be the Chicago Bulls. And I said this, right? Like we all knew. And whoever makes the finals heavily influences what the NBA draft is going to look like, what free agency is going to look like, and even what the on-court stuff is going to look like. And the Bulls realized we have a lot of the same personnel, right? And I think they realized team basketball is the new swag nowadays. Again, thanks to 2024-25 Indiana Pacers, man. Like, you look at who they have on paper, right? The Chicago Bulls. And I'm going to speak a little bit more on this later, but like, you have Josh Giddey, right? Who is somebody that pushes the pace and gets teammates involved. This is exactly why I keep thinking back to the Alex Caruso trade, because I'm like, I can't believe people thought that this was only a win for the OKC Thunder because they got Alex Caruso, who was going to, hustle his tail off and play really great defense, which actually happened, and they ended up winning the championship. Absolute W trade. We knew that. But there were so many people sleeping on Josh Giddey. And then when it was time to pay the man, nobody wanted to pay the man because I don't know if it's legit. I don't know if the triple doubles was legit. Like, nah. Can we look at this? Like, I felt there were some points where I felt like I was tripping. Where it's like, I know I'm a generally optimistic dude and I like to see the glass half full, right? But like, dang, whatever happened to the eye test? Can we just look at what Josh Giddey did with the Chicago Bulls and understand that this dude is seizing the moment and embracing his role, and this is exactly why he wanted out of OKC, because he knew I was a lottery pick. I was one of the best prospects of my draft class, and this is what everybody drafted me to do. I'm finally able to do it. Heck yeah. So now you look at that, right? And that's exactly what the Indiana Pacers have with Tyrese Halliburton. Somebody that's going to push the pace, drop dimes, get his teammates involved. They don't care who scores, and they have somebody to get it to in the half court, right? Pascal Siakam. The Bulls have that with Nikola Vucevic, Kobe White when healthy. And, it's just empowered everybody. When you share the wealth, it empowers everybody. And the Bulls took that exact formula and said, let's do that. Even, I think it's even hilarious, right? That we have Jalen Smith now, right? Who was an Indiana Pacer. So he was already familiar with what was brewing over there. He was somebody that could stretch the floor, protect the rim. He does a lot of the little things on the court as a backup big man. So, again, team basketball is the new swag nowadays, man. Like we've been saying, gone are the super teams and all that. Like, team basketball and depth is everything, absolutely everything in today's NBA. And we're seeing the Bulls copy that same formula. Another thing that stood out to me is that Nikola Vucevic, an engaged Nikola Vucevic, is always better. Always better. I mention this all the time, man. The reason why it didn't work out, one of the reasons why it didn't work out with Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, is because at the end of the day, both of those guys are isolation scorers. They're going to look off Nikola Vucevic a lot. It's just, you got to charge it to the game sometimes. And the problem with that was that when that happened and Nikola Vucevic was on the other end getting in foul trouble, he was dejected out of it mentally. But now he's on a team that shares the wealth, and they recognize that, hey, Nikola Vucevic, is he the same all-star that he once was? No, but he darn sure has the same skill set. We're going to keep him involved. We're going to feed him on pick and pops. We're going to feed him in the post. When he has a mismatch, we're going to try to get him the ball. And I love that, because there were so many opportunities in past seasons where the Bulls didn't always take advantage of those opportunities. And lo and behold, he's feeling good. He's making shots, and he's one of our better players on the team. So an engaged Vucevic, again, I say this, basketball 101, keep your bigs happy. I don't care what changes about the NBA for the next decade plus. That will always be a thing. Your bigs are always going to fight. They're going to fight for extra rebounds. They're going to call out screens. They're going to be better defensive communicators. They're going to play their best when they are involved. If you reward them in transition when they run the floor, if you reward them when they set a good screen, if you reward them when they seal their defender in and have a good look in the post right underneath the basket, they will play harder for you. If you look them off and you're doing all these, immature decisions, making all these immature decisions, they're going to throw their hands up and look at the coach and be like, you want me to get engaged, and you wonder why I can't, right? So none of that is all out the window this year with the Chicago Bulls. Again, I alluded to it earlier. Josh Giddey is legit. And I say this to say, welcome to the post LeBron NBA. Okay. And what I mean by that is this. So much of my upbringing, we had guys that revered Jordan, right? And it was the growth of the two guard and the wing scorer, right? But then LeBron comes along and he's like this hybrid Magic Johnson, Karl Malone figure, right? Absolute freaking nature. And he takes the NBA by storm. And now notice that a lot of teams are taking that formula. Oh, okay. and honestly, this could be a whole nother podcast episode, but I think Russell Westbrook has a great deal to do with this as well. But a lot of teams are like, yo, if we have a point guard that can rebound and can run the show, that already puts us ahead of some teams. Even if we're not the greatest team offensively, having a guy like that is automatically going to put us a little bit ahead of some of the teams in the lottery, or even some playoff teams that are in weird spots with roster construction, because we have somebody that is selfless and somebody that has a skill set that is really in tune with what this brand of NBA basketball needs now. And again, I think of Josh Giddey. I think of somebody who's 6'8", tall guard, right? Somebody who just floats across the court and just somehow finds the open man, but doesn't mind scoring for himself on occasion, right? Like a lot of these, these Luka Doncic's, Josh Giddeys. Like this is we're gonna see a lot more of these. Just like we saw a lot of the shooting guards and small forwards that wanted to be like Jordan in the 2000s and whatnot. Now I think we're going to start to see a LeBron / Russell Westbrook boom, where we're going to see a lot of guards, Cade Cunningham, right? A lot of bigger guards and even smaller guards who just like to rebound, like to get their teammates involved, and they just become great players to build your team around. And that's what Josh Giddey is. I feel like I have to say no more because I went on my tangent already. Josh Giddey's legit. The confidence of Matas Buzelis, again, having a full year now to get legit minutes. He's starting. He's figuring out his game. You know, I think the thing about Matas is that he still has to figure out what his skill set is. Like he has to figure out what his offensive makeup is, because the closest comparison I had when I was watching him, and I'm like, he does remind me a lot of Jalen Johnson. He's just not as aggressive as a rebounder. And you know, he is a very good shot blocker for his size, but I was like, nothing about Matis stands out as far as what he can do with the rock, but he is a great cutter. He can shoot the spot up three. He's athletic as heck. You know, I think it's those things, but I'm anxious to see what it's gonna look like when he puts it all together. But at the end of the day, he's getting minutes fresh off the boat. That's something that didn't happen last year, and it's paying off. Again, Billy Donovan had finally come to his senses and realized, I got to play this kid, and playing him, he got more confident, he got better, and now he's got this season to build on that. So I love what I'm seeing from him. Absolutely love what I'm seeing from Ayo Dosunmu, man. Like, this is a guy, he missed the rest of the season last year due to injury. He picked up an injury early on in the season and then missed the whole year. So he's back like he never left. He's been such a spark plug off the bench for us. Awesome to see him. Again, he's another low-key all-around guy. He's going to give high energy on defense. He's going to rebound his position. He's going to get his teammates involved, but he also knows when to get going with the scoring as well. So I love what he's doing. Trey Jones, man, Trey Jones last year when the Chicago Bulls acquired him, I was a little skeptical. I thought he was a little raw, you know, and even again, seeing him in person, I just felt like he was trying to do too much sometimes, trying to push the pace a little too much. And it was expected, right? We got him at the trade deadline, and that's always tough, especially coming into a situation with a team that's going to be a lottery team. Like, you know, you just kind of feeling things out still. But this year, oh man, this is what the Jones guards do. That's literally what I have in my notes here. This is what the Jones guards do. Tyus Jones, Trey Jones, he's showing a lot of that same skill set that his brother has. Be a floor general. Push the pace when necessary, slow it down when necessary, make the right reads, make the right plays, just find ways to just like affect the game that may not always show on the stat sheet, but then you blink and this dude has like 13 points, 5 assists, no turnovers. Like I love what I'm seeing from him. He looks a lot better than my premature assessment of him last season. And I think the Bulls, you know, again, we're shocking a lot of people right now because again, we're copying the Pacers formula. Obviously, I don't think we're the best team defensively. There's still some holes that we got to fix defensively. And obviously we got to think about what happens when Kobe White comes back. In a perfect world, you would think we have, it's just an extra person to get us buckets, right? Like having Nikola Vucevic inside out and then Kobe White, that's like perfect because we can play that team basketball. But when we absolutely need buckets, we got to throw it to Kobe White and we got to look towards Vuce a little more. So I think with that strategy alone, the Bulls are going to sneak up. Like, okay, sure. If you think about what the Chicago Bulls did last year and still were kind of in the play-in conversation, they should be looking at the play-in this year. I know that's where the Chicago Bulls have been. I know their North Star is a actual playoff spot, but it's still too early for me to have that much confidence in the team. You know, like I said, it's still very early. A lot of teams that do this kind of slow down at some point. So we'll see. Okay, I'm gonna pump the brakes for my hometown team, but I do like what I'm seeing offensively. I just think we could be better defensively, and that's what's really gonna dictate how well we do as the season progresses. But Josh Giddey's playing like an all-star. He absolutely should be an all-star if all things go well and everybody can keep it up. And yeah, they are definitely a hot team. That's legit, I would say. Again, at the time of me recording this, we are in the midst of a tough schedule with the Eastern Conference, some Eastern Conference contenders and whatnot. I know Wemby's going to be coming soon, so yeah, we're in a tough schedule, and this is where true character and true assessments I think reside. But I at least to start the year, I've loved what I've seen from the Chicago Bulls. Another hot team, though, comes from the East, and that is the Philadelphia 76ers, who they look like they got their swag back after an underwhelming 2024-25 season. And I think that started with the leadership of Tyrese Maxey, right? This is a guy that, it came out during media day, I believe, where he said, like, the biggest thing I wanted to do this year is get the team on board with, like, yo, no matter who's on the floor, we got to tell ourselves we're giving the same effort. And I think that was the issue with last year, right? You started the year without Embiid and Paul George. Then Paul George came back. Then Paul George couldn't play back to backs or something like that, right? Then Embiid's back. Then he's out. Then he's back. Then he's out. Right. Then you have all these vets. Then you got these young guys, and it was just weird. It was a different team every night, and it's very hard to build continuity when you have that. So I was a little bit nervous this year, but you can see that is facts this year. Like, Tyrese Maxey has taken a lot of minutes. Nick Nurse has been playing him, like, again, early 2000s minutes, like when homies was playing 41, 42, 43 minutes a game. He's going off, and I hope it doesn't come back to bite them, because he's been going off. And if it weren't for some of his scoring explosions, they probably wouldn't, at least record wise, wouldn't be as good as they've looked to start this season. But I think it started with Tyrese Maxey's leadership, and that's been really cool to see. I think everybody's dialed in. Everybody's on board. They know they want to give the same effort every night, no matter who's on the floor. And I think to Nick Nurse's credit, he did a better job including guys with energy, right? That was the thing. Because again, they have such a old head, young person roster that it's such a weird mix. But I think Nick Nurse finally realized, okay, we drafted VJ Edgecombe, who looks absolutely outstanding. Adem Bona, who's already a really good rim protector in this league, underrated in the sense that he doesn't get a lot of minutes, but he's somebody that gives great energy inside. You still got Andre Drummond, who can rebound the heck out the basketball. Quentin Grimes, again, I wasn't always high on Quentin Grimes, man. Like, I'll be honest, especially when he was in New York, I was like, I don't see the hype with this kid. And then when he got to Dallas, and then he went to Philly, and then he ended up really going crazy in Philly. But I was one of those people where I was like, well, I mean, the Sixers have so many injuries, somebody's got to score. So I didn't know if his play was legit, but this year he's showing it's legit. It's legit. He's made a jump, and that dude can play. So again, they're supplementing a lot of those vets on that roster with these young guys that can just flat out hoop. And like I said, man, VJ Edgecombe, I thought he was going to be a slasher who could play good defense, but he totally looks like a franchise altering swingman. That dude, you could tell he studied the mess out of Anthony Edwards, who himself is still growing, right? But he's already studying Anthony Edwards, and he's amazing. He's explosive. He gives them the exact energy burst that team needed. That is exactly what Nick Nurse and the Philadelphia 76ers needed last year. They needed a punch of energy, and that has been VJ Edgecombe. And even, again, some of those other guys, like I said, Quentin Grimes can give a scoring spark. Dominic Barlow, right? This dude, sneaky energy. He even earned his starting spot from training camp, right? It seemed like the power forward spot was the one spot that was wide open for the Sixers coming into the year. And Dominic Barlow snatched that. And he showed it. He had a good game the other night. I think it was like 13, 8, and 5. Like, he's a versatile forward, makes the right plays, high energy. I love what I saw from him. And like I said, I showed love to Dem. So they got high energy guys, because the thing with the Sixers is that they struggle scoring when it's not Tyrese Maxey and when Joel Embiid's not out there. So they got to get a lot through transition. That's where Kelly Oubre steps up. That's where VJ Edgecombe comes in. That's where Adem turns defense to offense, right? That's where Dominic Barlow gives energy. That's where Quentin Grimes gives a spark. And when you think about this with Joel Embiid slowly but surely getting back into form, right? Paul George and Jared McCain coming back, right? You want Paul George to return to be an added playmaker, to be an added scorer, to be an added. I know some of the flaws that they've experienced this year is that they don't have a lot of wing depth. They don't have a lot of size at the forward spot specifically. So Paul George is going to be able to fill in and take his time as he comes back, right? He's not going to be expected to drop 20 points a night. I think if I know PG like I know my guy, I think he's going to come in from his injury. He's going to feed VJ. He's going to feed Tyrese Maxey. And he's going to score when absolutely necessary. I would love to see him become a 20-point per game scorer again and really take Philly to be that third scorer that Philly needed and that they signed. But, he is getting older, and we just have to see. Jared McCain, I was really high on. He's going to be coming back soon. I think at the time of this recording, by the time this episode drops, maybe these guys will be back in the lineup, and we'll really get to see what Philly looks like full strength. But again, they need Jared McCain's off-ball movement and also ability to be a secondary playmaker. Again, I think that part of his game is very slept on because he's such a good shooter, but he's somebody that can handle the rock as well. So again, you pair this with what Quentin Grimes is doing, VJ Edgecombe, Tyrese Maxey, and obviously the big fella, he can stay healthy. Sixers, and even their locker room, it looks like the joy is there again with Joel Embiid and everybody. So it's looking like they're already mixing the recipe of what could be a much better season compared to last year, a much better season. So I love what I'm seeing from the Sixers, and I'm actually happy for them. And hopefully, I really do believe that it should only get better moving forward, just as long as they can stay healthy. All right, but then unfortunately, there are teams that have not been as good as these two teams that I just talked about. And these two teams, I came to the Boston Celtics and the Atlanta Hawks. And I really only threw the Boston Celtics in here because I was wrong about them, a little bit wrong about them. I had faith that they could still find a way to be a fourth, fifth, maybe sixth seed in the East. Currently, they're out of the playoffs right now as far as the standings go. Okay, yeah, see, right now, I mean, there's a lot of teams that are 3-4 at the time of this recording, but the Celtics are sitting 12th right now in the East. And yeah, I was wrong about them. I just thought they would be better. I understood that they had a very unproven front court, right? With guys like Nehemiah Queta, Luka Garza, so many guys, somebody else I'm thinking of, Chris Boucher, right? So it's a lot of like that. That's where a lot of their flaws were. And, I was a bit surprised. I won't lie. I was a bit surprised at how bad they were playing to start the season. And some of it at least that I've noticed is that, number one, I thought they just weren't letting Ant Simons cook enough. And I think it was more so an Ant Simons thing than it was a Boston Celtics thing, right? Like, I think Ant Simons was in that early stage of like, okay, I want to fit in, right? I'm going to take a few games to feel things out before I really play my game. And I think it just naturally comes with time as the season progresses. He's in a new city. He's wearing a new jersey, playing in new offensive systems, a new team, all that stuff. So he's got to find his footing. But I was of the notion that like, nah, if you don't have Tatum, you got to let these guys cook. You got to let Peyton Pritchard cook. You got to let Jaylen Brown cook. You got to let Derek White have his nights. And you definitely got to let Ant Simons off that bench cook. You don't bring him in to not shoot. Like, he has got to be that guy every time he steps on the floor. And I didn't always see that with the Boston Celtics. Again, that leads me to my next point, right? Like, I think their bench is very raw. They have some bright spots with, like I said, Ant Simons and the kid Hugo Gonzalez. I know they like his energy. He's shown to be a really good defender to be so young, but outside of that, they don't really have guys that jump off the page. Like I said, Chris Boucher, he's been a solid forward, but not somebody that like really impacts in terms of winning to my estimation. I would love to hear if you feel otherwise, but this isn't a guy that jumps off the page. He's going to play his role well. He's a lanky guy. He's going to do his thing. He could stretch the floor, but it's not nothing crazy. Luka Garza, this is really his first real shot playing legit minutes and being on a rotation on a consistent basis since he's came into the league. So this is new for him. This is new for a lot of guys. And I thought the Celtics starters was going to be enough, especially in the Eastern Conference. I figured their starters were going to be enough to carry a lot of the load. Again, I know that's not ideal. I know that's not the best winning formula, right? We obviously the Celtics aren't a championship team, but I thought it was going to be I thought it was going to be enough. And it hasn't been enough. And sure, maybe out east, maybe they can find their way in the play in. Maybe they can find their way even to an 8th seed or what have you. I don't know. There's a lot of season left. But yeah, it just hasn't been looking good. And I think a lot of that is because of their bench. Even when I caught a little bit of the Cleveland game. I think the first half of the Cleveland game. And obviously it's the Cavaliers, but man, Sam Hauser had a hot night and they cruised to a victory. Oh, and oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't mention him. Josh Minot, man. What a bright spot for a team that has a lot of front court holes and not having Jason Tatum. This kid, I see exactly why he earned the starting spot. That dude's energy and his never say die attitude. It's perfect Boston Celtics basketball. I love what I've seen from him. Is he perfect? No. But this is again, the first time he's getting real minutes. Another guy who's getting his opportunity in the NBA finally, right? And he's coming through. In that Cavaliers game, I tweeted it, man. The thing about the Cleveland Cavaliers, most likely, it's not always. They're still a good enough team to win games without this, but most of the time, if you manage to beat Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley in the rebounding battle, you increase your chances of winning, right? And even in a game like that where Donovan Mitchell, most of the shots he took were threes and he didn't finish with that many points, it made sense why the Celtics won that game because Josh Minot and Nemias Queta had the glass on lock. They combined for 27 rebounds together as opposed to Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley only combining for 17. So again, the Celtics have it low key. If they can beat the Cavs, they can beat anybody, in my opinion. They have it in them, but it's just some of those things where, again, obviously they won the rebound. Their front court took care of the glass. Sam Hauser had a really hot night from three. Those are factors that are going to increase their chances. But again, I think they got to figure out what it's going to look like on a day-to-day. How can we get the best out of our guys that really, how are we going to get the best out of our guys not named Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, and Ant Simons? That's going to separate them and improve their season this year that's if they still want to be good enough and play good basketball, right? Because there's still people who are yeah, the Celtics need a tank. Just throw it in. Jaylen Brown already came in with the shoulder thing. Let's just tank and get Darren Peterson or somebody or Cam Boozer, who knows, right? But I think if the Celtics do want to compete and they want to still be afloat and foster a good environment and to a point where, hey, if we do get Jason Tatum back this year, we can see how things go with Ant Simons, with Jason Tatum, things of nature. Again, I don't recommend that for Jason Tatum, but I'm trying to factor in a lot of the possibilities that the Celtics have this year. I think, again, to me, I always speak, like I said, if I was in the league, I know I wouldn't be somebody that wants to lose on purpose. So I've never been a big fan of tanking. And the Celtics have it to do some good things. Again, this is Jaylen Brown's opportunity to really lead a team for 82 games. This is Ant Simon's opportunity to show, okay, am I somebody that can fit with this Celtics team? Or maybe, they should flip me for somebody else. If I'm Nemias Queta, right? This is where I learned to be a really good big man. If I'm Luka Garza, how can I get my value? How can I find my value on a team like this? Josh Minot, right? Okay, I won my spot already, but I'm not necessarily this might not be my spot when Jason Tatum comes back, right? So again, how can I develop my confidence to win if I'm still around and let's say it's next season, I can still play impactful basketball. I think the Celtics can solve a lot of those questions this year if they stick with it, but Yeah, it hasn't looked good right now. And they are a team that I feel like can turn it around. But like I said, they really got to get the most out of that bench and a lot of these pieces that are getting opportunity for the first time. And then the other team who hasn't been doing that well is the Atlanta Hawks, man. And I hate to see it. I hate to see it, and I hate to say it because I was one of those people that was high on the Hawks, man. I really thought they had it in them this year to do something special, and they just haven't had the best start to the season. And I think it's only going to get harder for them because now Trae Young, not only has he had a slow start production wise shooting the basketball, but now he's out with a knee injury for at least the next 4 weeks. And again, when your star point guard is out, like this is who you built your team around, is going to change a lot of things. I think they're getting really good basketball from Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jalen Johnson. Right, Nickeil has a greater opportunity with this team. Jalen Johnson is pretty much picking up where he left off from the injury last year. Luke Kennard's shooting the lights out. You know, even Onyeka Okongwu is shooting good from 3-point percentage. But outside of that, like I said, Trae Young had a rough go. Dyson Daniels is under double digits scoring, doing great as a playing his role as a playmaker and defensively, but not anything crazy special, which again is going to have to increase with Trae Young out now. Kristaps Porzingis has done his thing. He's still working in the form. Again, he was in and out the lineup. He's still working in the form. I would like to see him do a better job protecting the rim, getting blocks. Again, that's what they brought him in for. But like I said, at the end of the day, you're without Trae Young, and that's going to be tough to come back from. And I think that's the big question. A team that's already 25th in offensive rating to start the season, who is going to step up as the creator for this team? Who is going to hit big shots down the stretch? Right? Like these next 4 weeks with Trae Young out is going to be very crucial if the Hawks still want to have a good season because man, this is the type of stuff where it just turns your whole season around. And I don't know. Again, it could very well be one of those things where the Hawks are just going to have to do a lot of their hard work the second half of the season. But I don't have a good feeling about this at all, man. And I don't have that much to say. Like a lot of their pieces, again, they were meant to play with Trae Young, and now you don't have Trae Young. So now what do you do? I look at that team, and I think, like I said, Jalen Johnson has really stepped up as a playmaker on this team. But outside of that, like I said, Nickeil Alexander-Walker is probably going to have some good basketball, but this is not the same. This is definitely not the same team that a lot of us thought was going to make a leap this year and even become like Eastern Conference Finals threats because they have a slow start. I thought this, like I said, outside of Onyeka Okongwu, outside of Luke Kennard, they aren't the best 3-point shooting team to start this year. Like I said, they're 25th in offense. It's not looking good. A lot of and that's what I think scares me. A lot of their surrounding pieces are guys that can play defense, but they're not necessarily guys that can get you a bucket, right? Like I said, it was meant to be with Trae Young. So they're guys that benefit from having a primary ball handler and a primary initiator. And when you don't have that, now you're forced to figure a lot of those things out by yourself, which again, are like guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker can score off the dribble. Jalen Johnson thrives in transition though. Dyson Daniels, in my opinion, thrives off transition. Kristaps thrives off pick and roll, pick and pop. Onyeka Okongwu thrives off pick and roll. Like you can't really give it to these guys. The only guys I would trust to give it to in the post is Kristaps and Jalen Johnson. It's like Luke Kennard coming off screens. Like you need a point guard that's going to take that, and they don't have that now. So yeah, man, I hate what I'm seeing from the Atlanta Hawks. Like I said, it's just sad. I don't have much to say. It's just really sad, and I hope they can turn it around, but I think it's similar to the Sixers last year. It might reach a point where they're going to find themselves scrambling, and then it's not going to be fun to come back from. So, unfortunately, the Celtics and the Hawks are teams that haven't been hot to start the year. I do believe the Celtics can kind of stay afloat with more games under their belt, but with the Atlanta Hawks, I'm starting to get sad. And again, you don't want to overreact. It's still very early, but I'm very disappointed on the Atlanta Hawks because I thought they had it this year, man. But again, it's still way too early in the season, right? The Bulls and Sixers could cool off. They'll still have things to figure out. While the Celtics and Hawks, there's still a little bit of room to maybe turn up somewhere down the line and everything in between. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. It's a long season, and teams always overachieve and underachieve this early in the season. But who's likely to keep that momentum going? The Bulls might be legit. The Sixers, they got a hot start. That's a great sign. Be sure to let me know which teams do you think are going to have hot starts. Are they going to build off their hot starts? Are there other teams that I haven't mentioned that are going to do the same? Are there teams that are cold that I haven't mentioned that you're really just like, hey man, this team ain't it. They need to do this, that, and the third. Let me know. All right. But lastly, here are some rookies that have looked like the opposite this early part of the season. Okay, let's get away from the teams and talk about individual rooks, the young bucks who are doing their thing to start their NBA careers. And the first one I got is Dylan Harper. I think this kid is playing as expected. A good secondary ball handler for a team with really good guard depth. I mean, you look at Stephon Castle, I just checked, this is a guy who's flirting with 19, 6, and 5. Dylan Harper, 14, 4, and 4, like all around guards. Like Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper is such a great guard tandem for the San Antonio Spurs to be with Victor Wembanyama for years to come. I love that. Dylan Harper, and I think he's not getting enough credit, man. Like again, I know he was before my time, but Ron Harper, like I do my homework. I'm a historian. Like I knew that before he was a Chicago Bull, like that dude was good for 25-5 with the Cavs. And I watched Dylan Harper and I'm like, he did get a lot of that from his pops. Like when you watch Ron Harper with the Bulls and even with the Lakers even later into his career, it was a guy that played solid defense, made the right plays, right? Shot when he was open. Like I see a lot of that with Dylan Harper. Like I said, I think he's a great secondary ball handler. I think he's a good defender. It's a guy that's not afraid to guard 94 feet. Again, locking up like his pops. And I think the dopest thing about his game is that he has already a tremendous sense of pace on his drives. I think it's already veteran-esque. I saw him versus Brooklyn. It was his first 20-point game. I thought he protected the ball well off the dribble. When he goes in the lane, he just has a tremendous pace about him where I think he knows what he wants to do and he doesn't settle until he gets what he wants. And again, he was facing Brooklyn that game. So like I gave him some grace. I'm like, okay, there's a bunch of babies on that team. They don't have a lot of bigs on that team. Like, all right. And then, but you've seen it. He had 11, 6, and 6 versus the Toronto Raptors. He was doing a lot of the same things. Again, a team that isn't the tallest team, but they got some defense over there. And Dylan Harper was still able to find his footing in that game. So I think, again, he's a really good all-around guard, can be great in this league with more development. And I think, again, that like I said it before, is proven true, man. The San Antonio Spurs are coming. They are coming. I just had that feeling, man. Wemby was only, obviously Wemby is MVP level, but it's these guys that they got around them: Stephon Castle, Dylan Harper, Devin Vassell. These guys can hoop, man, and this is all without De'Aaron Fox. So again, it's the Spurs got a really good guard core right now, and Dylan Harper is going to be good, really good for years to come, man. He's got the total package. He's a really good all around guard. That's always the first thing that comes to mind. He's just your quality all around guard that like any team would love to have him. The next guy has a pretty similar skill set, and that's Jeremiah Fears. I had to show love. I know he claims Chicago, but he did spend some time in Joliet, Illinois. So again, it's really cool to see somebody coming out of the hometown at this level, right? And I mean, he's just another kid that genuinely plays like he's been here before. Like to me, I know he caught a lot of flack for it, but to me, it's no surprise that Willie Green started him over Jordan Poole after just 2 games. And like I said, I think he's got that similar skill set to Dylan Harper. I play like I've been here before. I've done my homework. I work on my change of pace. I work on my pick and roll reads. I pay attention. I watch film. Like I am veteran-esque. I see the same thing with Jeremiah Fears. Like his attack offensively is like it's like he's been here before. Like some of these rookies come in the league, and especially now with at an even faster NBA, they rush, they're out of control a little bit, they tend to do too much. But these guys are just like fitting like gloves, man. And I think that's the thing. The Pelicans haven't won a game yet, but I noticed everybody's saying the same thing. Man, Jeremiah Fears is their guard. Like he's got to be their guy. And that's why, again, I'm so big on some of these teams trying to get DeJounte Murray, because I'm like, I think they're all in on Jeremiah Fears right now. His biggest strength is his slashing ability, can slither through the lane at will. Like that kid's got great pace about him as well. And I love what I'm seeing. The jump shots can get better. Some of those things can get better, and they will get better with time. But for what his biggest strength is, I think they need to let that youngin' fly. No matter what the Pelican season looks like, they got to let that kid fly because I believe he is their guard of the future. The last name is Cedric Howard. This was a guy that I did like that pick in the NBA draft. I thought he was a sleeper pick, and I love that he's proven to already be the exact player I always wanted the Memphis Grizzlies to have. When I watch him play, he has the total package. He can shoot the three. He can shoot the mid-range. He can get to the cup. He's got post-up game. He's big enough to post smaller guards up. He's big enough to be a impactful defender, right? Like, this dude has everything. And usually, with him being 22 years old, mature rookies usually figure it out faster, right? Again, when it comes to the college and the NBA draft, a lot of the franchises, they want the young pups. A lot of these young kids want to go one and done because it's like, look, let me get to the bread. I'm already NBA ready. I'm talented enough. The NBA is younger. So, right, a lot of these kids are thriving quicker than they once did, I would say, because it's not really a man's league. So they don't got to worry about some of them growing pains. Their growing pains come more in the form of making mistakes because they're getting a lot of opportunity, but not necessarily in the form of the physicality and whatnot, in my opinion at least. But I think Cedric Howard, being 22 years old, being an older rookie, like mature mindset, mature game. And it was funny. Some people were saying like, man, I don't know who to compare him to. And this is a name that randomly came to mind. And I don't think it's a perfect comparison, but I don't know why, but I immediately thought of Jamal Mashburn. I think it's just the strong, guard, not the quickest, but like has the skill set, can drop 20, has the skill set to be a 20-point per game scorer, all those things, can post up, a bigger guard. Like I think I have to watch a little more MASH. I haven't watched a lot of MASH in a long time, but I don't know, man, just somebody from my childhood who I knew could score and was just an underrated player, man. I think he's going to be in that tier. Hopefully he's even better, but I don't know, just off the top of my head, I don't know why his name came to me, but that's who I thought of. It might not be the most accurate comparison, but like I just see similarities. An effective guy that kind of hits you under the radar because he's not the most athletic, he's not the flashiest dude. That's the main takeaway from it. But yeah, man, really like Cedric Howard. And the Grizzlies are in a weird spot right now. Ja's going through some stuff where the trade rumors are flying, and by default, Jaren Jackson is thrown in those as well. Yeah, just weird stuff going on with the Grizzlies, man. So Cedric Howard might really be that bright spot moving forward. But again, he's another rookie where I love his game, man. And I really want him to thrive there. Especially if they manage to keep that team together, because I really hope they can figure it out, because Cedric Howard to me is just such a perfect puzzle piece if they steward him correctly. So yeah, man, it's always good to see rookies not hesitant to take the league by storm. And these are just a few of them. With a talented class, these are just a few of the young bucks who look primed to have long and successful careers thanks to their strong showings early. Certainly hope it continues, and I'm rooting for these guys. If there are any other rookies I should have shouted out, definitely let me know in the comments. But with that, we have made it to the end of another Hip to the Games episode. From hypothetical trades, hot and cold teams, and NBA ready rooks, today's show was filled with early season evaluations, positives, and negatives. But as always, these were just my thoughts, so now it's time to hear from you. You can tweet the show at Hip to the Games or tag me directly on Twitter or IG at Desmond Powell _ to share your thoughts on any of the topics discussed, as I would love to know what you think as well. And of course, I simply want to say thank you for listening to another episode of Hip to the Games, all for the love of the best combo there is. And here's a huge shout out to you for being hip to the games. Peace out and God bless. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Hip to the Games, and if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit up the socials at Desmond Powell _ and at Hip to the Games on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok so you don't miss out on the fun. And please follow or subscribe to the show and leave a review on the podcast platform you're on right now, as your support is greatly appreciated.